Be with you all. Recording in progress. Okay, great. Thank you, Andy. It is so great to be here with all of you today. Those of you I mentioned who have your cameras on, I'm just thrilled to see your faces. And thank you for being here. My screen shows we have 70 people, which is a lovely turnout. So I'm really glad that you all were able to be here. This has been an interesting couple of years for all of us. My recollection is that I gave the 2020 State of the District presentation in Tampa, and then I traveled to Jacksonville and gave it in Jacksonville, and then everything shut down, and I never made it to Orlando or to Fort Myers to do the State of the District there. And then last year, as you all may recall, I did it virtually for everyone. This year, I was able to do the State of the District presentation in Tampa last Tuesday. And for the first time in 2 years, I'm traveling to Fort Myers in a couple weeks, and I'll do it live there. And next year, I promise I'll be doing it live in Jacksonville and in Orlando, unless something horrendous happens and some new variant pops up, which I'm really hoping won't happen. One thing I just wanted to remind everybody of, the Pasquet seminar is scheduled in Tampa for March 29th through 31st. Some of you on the Zoom call today are probably speakers at that seminar, and I look forward to seeing you in person. And View from the Bench has been rescheduled. It was set for last October and then continued until May. It'll be in Tampa on May 12th and in Miami on May 13th, with the reception the night before on May 11th in Tampa. So I hope that many of you will be able to come for the View from the Bench program. And we're going to do View from the Bench twice in 1 year, because we're planning on picking it up again in October on the usual schedule. So you get to see all the judges twice. So I'll just go ahead and get started. You have to bear with me and hope that I can manage the PowerPoint, because one thing I have learned is that the judges are not as adept with Zoom and sharing their screens as all you lawyers have come to be. So if you, hold on, it's not working. I tried. Let's see. All right, wait a minute. My screen isn't going. So I have to figure out what's going on. Hold on a minute, because I'm just supposed to have to click. All right, so now I'm mortified. And we practiced this at 10:30 this morning, and we got it to work just fine. Hold on. It says end slideshow. No, I want to start the slideshow from beginning. All right, now let's see. There we go. Okay, I guess it just sat that way too long. All right. So those of you who came to the 2020 State of the District speech, and again, not Orlando, but Jacksonville, did hear it. You may recall that I had been chief judge just for a few months, and I talked about my vision for the future. And I talked about my motto, building for the future together. Judge Gentleman was big on mottos. She was big on uniformity and one court, one team. And I really tried to think of a similar motto. And mine was building for the future together. And really what I was thinking about was we were going to be welcoming new judges. I knew Judge Funk and Judge Gentleman would be retiring, and we'd be welcoming new judges. So I really was thinking about how we would need to integrate these new judges into our court, make sure everybody was on the same page in terms of maintaining all of the procedures that Judge Gentleman and Judge Williamson had worked so hard to develop, so that we had more uniformity and more district-wide procedures. And I did just see that Judge Gentleman just joined the call. So hi, Judge Gentleman, great to see you. Hope you're enjoying retirement. I think she may still be at the beach. Anyway, really happy that you're here with us today. So this year, I'm trying to think of what would be a good motto after everything that we've all been through. And this is what I came up with. Light at the end of the tunnel. I think we're just about past the critical portion of the pandemic. Again, I'm not a medical expert, but I'm just so thrilled that life is getting back to normal. People are starting to meet in person. There have been a few in-person events within our district, and I'll talk about those a bit more in a moment. But I'm just saying a prayer and keeping my fingers crossed that we can move on and have more of a normal life and do the things that we're used to being able to do together. So one of the first things I'd like to cover is our judges in the news and on the move. In getting ready for this presentation, my judicial assistant, Laura Stevenson, dug up this photo. I about passed out when I saw it. It was taken in July of 1999. Judge Funk and Judge Jenneman and Judge Glenn and Judge Brisman had all come on the bench in the Middle District in 1993. And this was what the court looked like then. So I call this picture, this was then, okay? So there's Judge Jenneman, the first woman judge appointed woman bankruptcy judge appointed in the state of Florida. And she's all by herself. As a matter of fact, she's the only woman on the bench until 2005 when Judge McEwen was appointed. So I'm sure it was a very different time then. I'm not sure, I forgot to look up who was the chief judge in July 1999. It may have been Judge Pasquet or it may have been Judge Proctor, I'm not sure. I tend to think it's Judge Pasquet because he liked to be the center of attention and he was always such a sharp dresser. But just what a great photo of a point in time. And of course, sadly, Judge Glenn's not with us anymore. Judge Baines is not with us anymore. And Judge Brisman, Judge Funk, and Judge Jenneman are now retired, although Judge Funk isn't leaving us anytime soon. So that's good news. Anyway, this was then. And then my next photo, I'm calling this, You've Come a Long Way, Baby. And I'm laughing because if I were Judge Colton, you would be hearing me sing a little song that those of you who were born after about 1965 probably don't even remember. But in the 70s, there was this great little commercial jingle, and it was something along the lines of, "You've come a long way, baby. Look what you've got to today, where you've got to today. You've got your own cigarettes now, baby. You've come a long, long way." If you can believe this, there used to be cigarette advertising on television and in magazines, full page ads in magazines. And Virginia Slims was a cigarette designed for women. But look at our court today. I'm just blown away. At this moment, we have 3 male judges on the bench, and we have 5 women judges. Just really amazing. Anyway, I want to go through our judges one by one and tell you a little bit about them. Of course, the Jacksonville folks all know Judge Funk very well and know everything there is to know about him. But since I'm speaking with the Orlando bar as well, I'm going to share some information. So Judge Funk was appointed by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals on November 3rd, 1993. Many of you in Jacksonville attended his retirement luncheon on November 3rd last year in Jacksonville. And as you know, Judge Funk has been recalled for a 3-year term through November 2nd, 2024. We're just thrilled that he's still staying with us and still sitting on the bench. So his luncheon was wonderful. There were about 150 people there. It was a huge success. I was supposed to be there, and unfortunately, the Jacksonville folks know this, maybe the Orlando people don't. It turned out that I had repeated exposure to family members who came down with mild cases of COVID right before the night before I planned to make the drive to Jacksonville. So I decided it was the best thing was for me not to go, which really, I have to say, broke my heart. I'm getting over it, but it was a hard decision to make. Anyway, we're really thrilled that Judge Funk is sticking around with us. So this is a happy man at his luncheon. And again, the Jacksonville folks know about this. The Orlando folks may not. So Judge Jay Brown has some connections at the University of Georgia, and he was able to arrange for this helmet to be given to Judge Funk. So the helmet is inscribed, "Normally 28 years on the bench is not something I applaud. Congrats, Judge, Go Dogs, and it's signed by Georgia coach Kirby Smart. And as you all know, the Georgia Bulldogs went on to win the national championship. So I understand that Judge Funk now has that helmet sitting on the bench with him, and he's very proud of it. So that was just a fabulous gift, all Judge Brown's idea, and obviously a huge success. So I'm really happy for Judge Funk. Here is a picture of Judge Jenneman's official photographic portrait. You can see from the background of the photo her love for the Orlando area. Really just a special, special portrait that is probably already hanging in Orlando, although I haven't seen it hanging in the courthouse yet, but we saw it at the reception. Judge Jenneman also appointed November 3rd, 1993, and she retired in February 2022. There was a lovely portrait ceremony in person held on February 4th in Orlando. That was Judge Jenneman's last official day with the court. When I spoke at that ceremony, I talked about a word that I had struggled to come up with to describe the impact that Judge Jenneman had on the Middle District of Florida. And the only word that I could come up with was transformational. Judge Jenneman was a transformational chief judge. Her vision for uniform procedures throughout the district, getting the judges on the same page, her baby, the procedure manual, the source on our court's website, none of that would have happened without Judge Jenneman. It didn't always happen easily. There were sometimes some struggles. And when I say struggles, I mean conflicts among our judges in terms of disagreeing regarding how things should be handled. But we all agreed with the principle that we want to make it easier for the lawyers who practice before us. That's really important. So many of you have statewide practices, and really, really important that we facilitate your practice of law. A couple other things wouldn't have happened without Judge Jenneman. Orlando and Lori Weatherford and Judge Jenneman were huge supporters and proponents of the mortgage modification mediation program. And as many of you will recall, Judge Jenneman even essentially hosted a mortgage modification mediation summit years ago in Orlando, at which many, many attorneys attended. That included debtors' attorneys, creditor attorneys, and representatives of the major mortgage companies, as well as judges from the Southern District of Florida and the Northern District of Florida, all with the goal of making the mortgage modification mediation process more uniform throughout the state of Florida. And of course, our court's MMM program has been wildly successful. I don't even have the numbers on how many thousands of debtors have been successfully able to modify their mortgage loans, and no comparison with the state court system, which was not nearly as successful. So thank you, Judge Jenneman. Her retirement is a personal loss to me. I miss Judge Jenneman every day, but she just did a remarkable job in her 28 years with our court, and everything that she started in her initiatives during the time that she was chief judge, we've done our best to carry on with. On a slightly sadder note, when I became chief judge, we did not know that Judge Cynthia Jackson would be compelled to retire for health reasons. I miss Judge Jackson. She was a ray of sunshine and always very supportive, and particularly supportive of me and my role as chief judge. Judge Jackson served in the Orlando division for a few years, and then when Judge Glenn passed away, she moved to the Jacksonville division. Her official retirement date was in August of 2021. Judge Jackson is missed by her colleagues. Judge Colton saw her recently in Jacksonville, and she's always interested in hearing news of our court. And I know Judge Specie from the Northern District has been able to see her a couple of times. I haven't been to Jacksonville to be able to go see Judge Jackson, but I hope to make that trip sometime in the near future. And then some updates on our other judges. Judge Williamson, I think you may know, was appointed by Chief Justice Roberts to the Space and Facilities Committee of the Judicial Conference of the United States. That is a national committee. I believe he's the only bankruptcy judge that's sitting on that committee. And he told me the other day that 11th Circuit Court of Appeals Chief Judge prior had just telephoned him and asked him to sign up for another 3-year term. So I'm thrilled about that. He's really doing great work for the Middle District of Florida. And so that's very good news from our perspective. Judge McEwen, I have a lot of news about Judge McEwen. First of all, she was the recipient of the National Conference of Bankruptcy Judges 2021 Public Outreach Award. That was presented to her at the NCBJ conference, which was held in person in Indianapolis last fall. It was wonderful to see Judge McEwen receive that award because she deserved it so much. But in addition to being deserving, how her nomination for the award came to be was really remarkable. And how that happened was Judge Gentleman had mentioned it to me that we should think about nominating her. And at the same time, Judge Isikoff in the Southern District and Judge Karen Spacey in the Northern District were also thinking about nominating her. So we wrote a joint nomination letter, and we could not think of an individual judge who would be more deserving of this award. So that was really wonderful. And Judge McEwen, also appointed by Chief Justice John Roberts. She is serving on the Judicial Conference's Advisory Committee on Bankruptcy Rules. She chairs a subcommittee on business rules, and she's the liaison to the Advisory Committee on Civil Rules. So that's a major role as well. She's also the NCBJ's 11th Circuit Governor and a member of the NCBJ's Legislative Committee. I will give you a legislative update in a few minutes, and it's really wonderful to have Judge McEwen, to have her feet on the ground. She knows so many people, and she does a wonderful job of communicating with members of Congress on behalf of the Bankruptcy Court. Judge Colton has actually just concluded her service, 4.5 years of service on the mediation team in the Puerto Rico Promesa bankruptcy case. I think you all may know that she was appointed to that mediation team, which actually lost a member, a California judge, just couldn't take the traveling after a few months. But she was appointed to that mediation team by the district court judge presiding in the Promesa case. That is Judge Laura Taylor Swain, who's actually the chief judge now of the Southern District of New York. Judge Colton put her heart and soul into that mediation process. For the first 1.5 or 2 years, she was going to New York several times a month. Mediations would take place going on till 11 o'clock at night. She had every single Saturday morning, the mediation team had a conference call. She told me one time she thought she was spending about 150 hours a month on that mediation. The good news is that in January, due in large parts to the efforts of the mediation team, as a matter of fact, I think it probably wouldn't have happened without the mediation team's efforts, Judge Swain did confirm a plan. The plan was largely consensual. My understanding is there are some appeals pending, but because the major constituents were on board, everyone's pretty confident. So that's very good news. So Judge Colton, as you all may know, has been handling some subchapter 5 cases in Jacksonville. I think she has about 40 cases that she's continuing to handle. There are some conflicts and reasons why Judge Brown can't take some of those cases. And our new incoming Jacksonville judge, who I'll talk to you about in just a moment, also is conflicted out of some of those cases. So Judge Colton anticipates completing those cases. So she really is willing to serve our district in any way necessary. So relevant to Orlando, our most recently, I'll say, invested judge, Judge Lori Vaughn, was appointed February 25th, 2020. And on the second anniversary of her appointment, her formal investiture finally took place in Tampa. That was in person, and we were just thrilled to be able to do it in person. Those of you who were able to make the trip, and I know there was quite a few attorneys from Orlando who risked life and limb on I-4 to be there, and a few attorneys from Jacksonville as well. They know what a heartwarming experience that investiture was. Judge Vaughn really spoke to everyone from the heart, and it was a wonderful, wonderful event. I am particularly grateful to Judge Vaughn because, as some of you may know, I served as the judicial chair or liaison to the Local Rules Lawyers Advisory Committee for, I think, 9 years. And Judge Vaughn took that role over. Well, I was ready to pass the baton, and Judge Vaughn has embarked on that role with a lot of energy. She's just doing a fabulous job. I will mention that my judicial assistant, Laura Stevenson, who was instrumental to my being able to work on the program, on the local rules, is continuing to work with Judge Vaughn on them, and that's making a real difference too. So I really thank both of them. But congratulations to Judge Vaughn. I think I saw her name on the screen. I'm so glad you're here. We've enjoyed having you on the bench for the last 2 years, and your investiture was truly remarkable. So just some highlights of Judge Vaughn's investiture. Here's a copy of the program. And when Judge Vaughn joined us on the bench, here's a photo of all of us. So this is as of February 25th. And Judge Vaughn was sworn in by Judge Charles Wilson of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Some of you may know that Judge Wilson has chaired the selection committee for the selection of the Florida judges over the course of the last few years. And we're very grateful to him for all the hard work that he's put into selecting bankruptcy judges for the Middle District of Florida. I don't think when Judge Wilson was sworn in to the 11th Circuit that he had any idea how much time he would spend in, interviewing and being involved in the selection of bankruptcy judges. And I know our Chief District Judge, Judge Timothy Corrigan in Jacksonville, I know he had no idea how much time he would be spending in selecting bankruptcy judges. So hopefully we won't need any new bankruptcy judges in the Middle District anytime soon, but we are really grateful to them. And then here's just a quick photo of everyone who spoke at the event. It was really wonderful. You'll recognize Father Tim Corcoran on the side there. You know, Father Tim, after his retirement, went to the seminary and is now actually a retired Catholic priest after serving the priesthood for 10 years, but once a priest, always a priest, so he's still a priest. And Judge Colton, for those of you who are there, and I think we'll have a recording of the program at some point on our website, but Judge Colton did her usual fabulous job of speaking at the event. It was just really remarkable, so it was a pleasure to be there. And Jacksonville news, Judge Jay Brown, sworn in on November 3rd, 2021. Those of you in Jacksonville know Judge Brown very well. He's practicing there for over 20 years with the Ackerman Law Firm. And many of us got to know Judge Brown because of his involvement with the Florida Bar. He served as the chair of the Bankruptcy UCC Committee, and he was also the chair of the Business Law section of the Florida Bar. Judge Brown is a fellow in the American College of Bankruptcy. So we are thrilled that Judge Brown has joined us on the bench and really happy that he's working with us, and he's really hit the ground running. So that's great. And then our newest Orlando judge, Judge Grace Robson, also sworn in on November 3rd, 2021. I'm going to share something with you in just a moment about that swearing in ceremony. Judge Robson came to us from the Southern District of Florida. She practiced most recently with the Markowitz, Ringel, Trustee, and Hartog firm. And before that, she was with Berger Singerman. She is board certified in bankruptcy, and she served on the Bankruptcy Bar Association for the Southern District of Florida. And she was the Broward chair of the Pro Bono Committee and the CARE Program Committee. So we are delighted that Judge Robson has joined us. She is just doing a wonderful job. We're really happy to have her. So I'm going to do another flashback to the past. Here's November 3rd, 1993. Judge Funk and Judge Gentleman sworn in together by Judge Choflat of the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. So fast forward to the day, 28 years, and here's our bench, with one minor exception I'll tell you about. But Judge Gentleman swore in Judge Robson, and Judge Funk swore in Judge Brown. What a remarkable occasion. Now, you'll notice that the woman in the front center next to Judge Colton is not me. That is Judge Specie. That's because, as I told you, I wasn't able to be there. So I asked Judge Specie to sit front and center, and at some point I'm going to have myself photoshopped into that photo so that I can pretend that I was there and create false memories in everyone. But what an amazing experience to think that 28 years to the day they would be swearing in their successors. Absolutely amazing. Then a little bit news about me. Some of you may recall that I've been on the bench for a while now. Actually, my 14th year on the bench concludes this June, and I was just advised last week that I was sworn in, that I was approved by the 11th Circuit for an additional 14-year term. I don't think I'll work for 14 years, but I'll be around for a while. So my joke is this. It's really nice that I got the news that I had been reappointed. It would have been very awkward if right before Judge Vaughn's investiture, I had learned that I had not been reappointed, in which case I would have been presiding at the investiture ceremony with tears running down my cheeks. So it was happy news to receive in advance. And then I don't know if the Jacksonville folks, oh yes, the Jacksonville folks do know this person. Sorry about that. So, but the Orlando folks may know her as well. Just some news about one of our colleagues. So Denise Barnett, who was a trial attorney with the Office of the United States Trustee for a long time. And before that, she worked as an associate with the Smith-Hulsey firm. And before that, she was Judge Proctor's law clerk. We are delighted that she was recently appointed as a bankruptcy judge in the Western District of Tennessee. She has moved to Memphis. She was sworn in November 8th, 2021. And Judge Barnett made an appearance at Judge Vaughn's investiture. Unfortunately, I didn't really get to talk to her a lot, but it was just wonderful to see her. And we're really happy that another attorney from the Middle District of Florida has gone on to the bankruptcy bench. So that was just great news. And then, as Orlando and Jacksonville both know, we're waiting with bated breath for the appointment of 2 new judges, a woman in Orlando and a man in Jacksonville. And because this is public and being recorded, I'm not going to say their names, but I think everybody knows who they are. And we are so excited. We expect them to be sworn in very soon. I was telling the folks on the call before everybody joined in, that everyone has a kind of a misunderstanding about what goes on with the FBI background checks. And part of that comes from the FBI. And that's because the FBI investigator tells the person who's being investigated when the report is done, because the investigator is done with his part of the job. But that just starts a whole review process, and it takes a while to work that through the system, through the Administrative Office of the United States Courts and the 11th Circuit. So we do expect their appointments to be imminent, and we're excited about that. And just so everyone knows who everyone's law clerks are, I thought it might be helpful to know. Cindy Turner is my career law clerk. And before she was working with me, she was Judge Glenn's career law clerk for 25 years. She never moved to Jacksonville. She and Judge Glenn talked every day on the telephone at 4 o'clock in the afternoon after he moved to Jacksonville. But I was just thrilled that she was able to come work with me. Ed Comey is Judge Williamson's law clerk, career clerk. Lisa Scotton with Judge McEwen. Judge Colton has a new law clerk. Jennifer Deeb is a new career law clerk. Jennifer had been Judge Susan Bucklew's career law clerk for 20 years. Judge Bucklew is now on senior status with the district court. And Tim Fox, who some of you may know, is also still working with Judge Colton. Judge Vaughn has 2 law clerks. Griffin Butler. Griffin started with our court in Jacksonville as a temporary law clerk. Then he came to Tampa for a year where he clerked for Judge Colton, and now he's clerking for Judge Vaughn. So we're thrilled to have Griffin with us. And Jean Kraft Herdeker. Jean had been Judge Jenneman's law clerk and is now clerking with Judge Vaughn. So we're really happy to have both of them with us. Judge Brown's law clerks are Cameron Fleming and a person well known to the Jacksonville lawyers, Jody Hollingsworth, who had been Judge Funk's longtime career law clerk. So we're thrilled to have both of them. Judge Robson's law clerks are Chelsea Moore. Chelsea had clerked with Judge Jenneman. Before that, she clerked with Judge Peter Fay on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. She's now working with Judge Jenneman, and Caitlin Meyerson has excuse me, she's now working with Judge Robson, and Caitlin Meyerson has recently joined Judge Robson. And Kristen Lederkirchen is temporarily on assignment to Judge Funk, and is expected to be working with our newest Jacksonville judge shortly. So we're really thrilled about Kristen's longtime career with our court. So just a few updates on our clerk's office. You all, I think, know Cheryl Loesch. Her primary office is in Orlando, so you may see her a little more than the Tampa and Jacksonville folks do, but she tries to get to Tampa and Jacksonville on a regular basis. Cheryl is currently serving as the president of the International Association for Court Administration. She got a trip to Finland out of that position. I think that was in the fall, because there was going to be a big international meeting of that association in Finland, but then it got canceled due to COVID. So hopefully that's being rescheduled. And then I'd like to introduce someone new to you, and that is our new Chief Deputy, Jose Rodriguez. So Jose is working in Tampa, as did our prior Chief Deputy. Our prior Chief Deputy was Johnny Profit, and some of you may have known him. Johnny retired after many years with our court last December. Jose comes to us from the Southern District of Florida, where he was the Chief Deputy for many years. And before that, he was the Director of Administrative Services. He has a lot of experience with the bankruptcy court. So I'll tell you this little story about Jose. He had applied for the position, and he has family in the Tampa area. His wife's family lives here, and they were interested in relocating to Tampa now that her parents were getting older and their children were up and out of the house. And he was a very strong candidate for the position. And I got a call from Judge Laurel Isikoff, the Chief Judge of the Southern District. And those of you who know Judge Isikoff know what a beautifully sweet, modulated, melodious voice she has. And Judge Isikoff said to me, "Carol, I don't want to influence you, but if you don't hire Jose, you're making the big mistake." So she also told me that she was very happy for Jose, but she was standing on the top of the Miami courthouse, planning on throwing herself off of it because they were going to miss him so much. So welcome, Jose, to our court. We're thrilled to have you. And then our division managers, sometimes we call them deputies in charge, but sometimes we call them our division managers. Folks in Jacksonville all know Gull Weaver so well. I think Gull has been with our court for 30 years. Absolutely amazing. Kathy Dietz, longtime employee with our court. She is the division manager in Orlando, and Tina Mason in Tampa and in Fort Myers. So just to give you a quick recap, our staff is way down from where it was when I came on the bench. I think when I came on the bench, we had about 180 employees. Our clerk office employees, 66 employees, 3 division managers, 27 case managers, and 10 IT staff. The one area that has grown has been our number of IT staff, and that's because IT is so critical to us. So just a few words about the budget. You may recall that I mentioned this last year, fiscal year 2021, and the federal fiscal year runs October 1st through September 30th. But for fiscal year 2021, we had an 11.5% across the board cut. We're anticipating, once the budget's finalized, I think it's almost done. We're operating under a continuing resolution at the moment, but I think there's action in Congress going on right now for a final budget. But we're anticipating and hoping that we don't have a 14%. That's an additional 14%. That's not 14% from 2020. From 2020, that's 14% after 11.5% last year. We're expecting up to a 14% cut. So that has an impact on us. I'm going to talk in a moment about filings, which, as you all know, are way down. You'll be as surprised as I am to see just how far down they are, nationally as well as in Florida and the Middle District. But our budget is based in part upon our filings, and our staffing formula in terms of how many employees we're allowed to have is based upon the number of filings. So with filings going down, we have some real concerns about the budget going forward. And then just to give you a quick update on the district court. So overall, the district has 15 district judges, 14 senior district judges, and 22 magistrate judges. I have a word, it's a made up word. It's not a real word, but it's a word I like to say all the time. I love the word squozen. Okay, I know it's not in the dictionary, but I say that we're being squozened in the Tampa courthouse. And the reason for that is Tampa was approved for an additional magistrate judge, and they have a number of senior district judges, and they've run out of courtroom space, and the magistrates need to have courtrooms. And anyway, they asked us very nicely, not that we had any choice, but they asked us very nicely to give up our courtroom 9B, which is the courtroom that Judge Colton had been using. So we're going to be doing some courtroom sharing in Tampa. All of Judge Colton's hearings will be noticed for courtroom 9A. At the moment, she's doing all hearings by video and by telephone. She's set up her conference room as a video hearing room. So at the moment, we haven't seen any real changes. If we have to move hearings around from where they've been noticed, there'll be a sign on the door. So our other 3 Tampa judges, that's me, Judge Williamson, and Judge McEwen, we're all committed to working this out. And fortunately, our calendars kind of dovetail with each other. So there's not too many times when we would need to have 4 courtrooms all at the same time. Okay, I promised you a few words on statistics, and statistics for bankruptcy practitioners and for bankruptcy judges and bankruptcy clerks of court are a bit depressing. So nationally, this is the national numbers. Bankruptcy filings are down 24%, and this is through the year ending December 31st, 2021. So on that annual basis, 2021 filings were down 24% from the year ending December 31st, 2020. And if you compare 2021 filings to the year ending December 31st, 2019, we're down 46%. Amazing. We had been told that we should anticipate what was called a tsunami of bankruptcy cases starting in late 2020 and early 2021. And that tsunami has not hit. There's any number of reasons why there's speculation for that. Part of it is stimulus payments and earned income credit payments received by individual debtors, particularly those with children. It's just really amazing that bankruptcy cases could have dropped that far. In the Middle District, our 2021 filings were down 16.7% from 2020. So not down as far as the national case statistics are, but we're down 33.7% from 2019. So again, really, really surprising. This is the filings by division. You can see my Fort Myers. I think you all know I handle the Fort Myers docket. Fort Myers caseload has really dropped. Jacksonville way down. Orlando way down. Tampa way down. Here's just the comparison of the numbers. We didn't do the percentages, but just look at the difference between 2019 and 2021. Huge decrease in filings. And Chapter 11s, obviously a big decrease from 2019. They're not that far down from 2020 numbers, but just way down. One thing that we bankruptcy judges are always interested in is how we compare with the rest of the country. So I'm not going to read all of these statistics for you or to you. The big one is the Middle District of Florida, second in total number of bankruptcy case filings. It's amazing. So we're slow, everybody's slow, but we're pretty busy. And speaking on behalf of my colleagues, I haven't found that the reduced caseload has impacted on my workload. There's lots of litigation, lots of interesting issues, and we're really busy. Another important number here is that per authorized judgeship, we're first in the country for pro se filings. So to the extent that you're able to assist a judge in handling a pro se case. You're assisting the court, you're assisting the pro se debtor, usually the debtor, sometimes it's a creditor, but it's an incredibly valuable service to our court. And for those of you who take on pro bono cases, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. We have a lot of pro bono cases. Then the middle district weighted case average. So this is what I like to say about the weighted case average. It's like the FICO score. They could tell you how they figured out, but if they did, they'd have to kill you. So there's some way that the administrative office weighs cases. Chapter 11s are weighted more heavily. I think Chapter 13s are weighted more heavily than Chapter 7s. Adversary proceedings are given a certain weight, but every year there's statistics that come out regarding each district's weighted case average. And the weighted case average is per authorized judgeship. So it doesn't make any difference if those judgeships are filled and there's actually a live judge in there working. The number is calculated based on authorized judgeships. So for the year ending December 31st, 2021, our national average of weighted cases per judgeship is 535. We ranked 7 in the nation for a total of 754 cases per judge altogether, okay? And so 754 is the actual number of cases per judge. The weighted case average is 535. But that ranking of 7th in the nation, 8 judges plus 1 temporary judgeship, that temporary judgeship hadn't been filled and we were short. We really only had 8 judges on the bench during 2021. And that would bring our average to 848 weighted cases per judge, which would tie us in 4th place with the Southern District of Florida. So our judges are working hard and certainly bearing a heavier caseload than many judges in the country. I think there's something like 91 judicial districts in the country. So you can see what it means to be ranked number 4. I wanted to give you all a bit of an update on the Small Business Reorganization Act. I can thank Guy Van Balen, who is the Assistant United States Trustee in our Tampa office. I believe he also gets to Orlando and maybe to Jacksonville. He's also helping out in the Southern District, but he has helped me with these numbers. You'll be interested in knowing that Florida is the number 1 state in the country for Subchapter 5 case filings. 500 Subchapter 5 cases filed through February 28th, 2022. So that's since the inception or the effective date of the act, which was in February 2020. So really for a 2-year period of time, 500 Subchapter cases filed. Nationally, Florida's number 1. Here's the Middle District, 277 Subchapter 5 cases filed. Southern District, 193 Subchapter 5 cases filed. Northern District, 30 Subchapter 5 cases filed. So Middle District, number 1, first in the country. Southern District, 3rd in the country. Northern District, 33rd in the country. And keep in mind, the Northern District is a single judge district. So that 33rd, it's, ranking is probably a little deceptive in terms of actual numbers. By division, Tampa division had 119 cases. Orlando, 100 cases, so very, very close. Jacksonville division had 41 cases. I think those are all Judge Colton's cases. And the Fort Myers division, 17 cases, which I think is about half of the Chapter 11 cases, all Chapter 11 cases filed in that division were Subchapter 5. Just a little bit of an update. I can thank Jason Burgess for some of this information regarding the COVID-19 Bankruptcy Relief Act, which extends some bankruptcy provisions that were included in the CARES Act and the Consolidated Appropriations Act through March 27th, 2022. So that's coming up really soon. You need to stay tuned for further legislation. So this is a off-the-record report from Judge McEwen, who has her finger on the pulse of what's happening in Congress. Judge McEwen says, everyone is aware of the March 27th, 2022 sunset of the debt ceiling for the SVRA, and there are active discussions and negotiations. She also says there is bipartisan support for making the debt limit permanent at 7.5 million. She thinks there's a good chance that language is going to be included in an omnibus bill within the next week or so, and that a subchapter 5 technical corrections bill may be included, as well as a possible upward adjustment to the Chapter 13 debt limits. And if the Chapter 13 debt limits are adjusted upwards, there may be a removal of the distinction between secured and unsecured debt. In addition, the subchapter 5 debt limit may be adjusted to reflect changes in the consumer price index under section 11, under section 104. I think under 104 every 3 years, and there's an adjustment based on the consumer price index. And if that happens, it's very likely that the Chapter 13 debt limit will also be tied to the consumer price index. So those will be interesting things to see. So we'll see if that actually happens. All right, just some new developments. Hearings going forward, are they in person? Are they by Zoom? And of course, you'll love the cat meme there. I'm not a cat, you're not a cat. Please don't come to court as a cat. I think, how many people in your family sent you that video or that meme? I think about 20 people in my family sent it to me. Pretty, it was amusing, at least for people watching it, maybe not for the lawyer involved. In any event, really what our court is committed to at this time is, for the most part, hybrid hearings. Oh, Laura just comes tell me, oops, I forgot to push it. I could see it. There's my cat meme. Sorry about that. We're committed to hybrid hearings. As you know, Judge Funk in Jacksonville does not do hearings by Zoom. He does do them by telephone. His courtroom is open. People are welcome to attend hearings in person. The rest of the judges are doing hearings in person, by Zoom, and by telephone. Everyone is welcome to come to the courthouse in person. We are in the process of fine-tuning some revisions to our notices of hearing that will spell out that hearings are available in person, by Zoom, and by telephone and in person as for Judge Funk. So you'll be seeing those revised hearing notices come out soon, but everyone's courtroom doors are open. The judge's position is they love hearings in person. They're willing to accommodate hearings by Zoom for attorneys who either don't feel comfortable coming to the courthouse or at this time, at least, appreciate the time savings involved in being able to appear by Zoom. The day may come when when judges are going to say, no, we want people in the courtroom, at least for everybody that's local in town, but you'll hear more information on that when that happens. The notices that are being revised do not include our orders setting trials. So you really have to be in touch with the judges' chambers regarding how a trial is going to be conducted, whether it will be conducted by by Zoom, or whether it will be in person. Good news, and some of you may have heard this already, Judge Corrigan entered an order vacating his prior COVID-19 mask order. So masks are no longer required in the federal courthouses. You're free to wear a mask if you'd like to wear a mask. It's purely voluntary. Judge Corrigan, when he issued this order, he provided, as he always does, that the presiding judge in a particular courtroom or particular chambers can dictate whatever protocols that judge thinks is appropriate. I don't think any of our judges will be requiring masks in a courtroom. It's probably not a bad idea to have a mask in your pocket just in case you end up needing to use one. But I think that was good news for everybody. Judge Vaughn, I know, is chuckling because the mask requirement was in place for her investiture. And she said, I just know it's going to be lifted right after my investiture. Well, it took about 2 weeks, Judge Vaughn, so didn't happen the day after. And maybe Judge Corrigan sat on it just so you wouldn't be upset, but I don't really think that's the case, although that would be a funny spin to put on it. Just so you all know, the district court had put together a COVID committee. Judge Mary Scriven in Tampa was the chair of the COVID committee. consisting of other district judges throughout the district. And the court had retained an epidemiologist from the University of Florida that they've been getting weekly reports from. The incidences of positive diagnoses, positive test results are way, way down compared to what they were. Of course, those are the results that the state or the counties know about, because people who are taking tests at home aren't probably reporting their positive tests. So that's just a different, that's kind of a different standard. But it looks as though the worst of the Omicron variant has passed us by, thank goodness. And I really hope that none of you have been horribly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I know that many of you have had COVID-19. I hope they were all mild cases. Certainly in our court, in our clerk's office, we've had individuals who tested positive. Most of them were not seriously sick. We do have a few staff members who lost family members, and that's just heartbreaking to think that that would happen. Really, really sad. So I do hope we're past the worst of it and hope that life is getting back to normal. Just want to give you a quick update on our local rules and procedures. First of all, I want to point out to you on our website, right there in the middle, the source. The source is our best resource. Again, that was Judge Gentleman's baby, and there are more forms than you can imagine on the source and more procedures. So you really need to update yourself frequently. Take a look at the source, and I'll talk about that more in just a moment. Local rules update. Chapter 11, small business debtors and subchapter 5 debtors need to file a check register with their monthly operating reports and their schedule of receipts and disbursements. That is our local rule. The big rules and the U.S. trustees general guidelines don't require a schedule of receipts and disbursements for small business debtor cases and subchapter 5 debtors. But we do, because we like to see that schedule of receipts and disbursements. Very helpful for us in analyzing what's going on with the debtor, and helpful for creditors and helpful for the United States trustee. But now a check register needs to be included. We have a deadline in subchapter 5 cases for the debtor to file a motion for final decree 30 days after the disposition of adversary proceedings or contested matters, whichever is later. You've probably heard me or remember my saying this about our local rules. To a certain extent, the local rules are aspirational. I'm not saying you won't ever get tripped up by one and have a problem, but this is what I would call an aspirational rules, which means if you don't timely file the motion for final decree, you don't need to lose sleep over it. Just get it on file as soon as you can. And then we now require individual debtors in Chapter 11s who are seeking a discharge. They need to file a statement certifying whether 522Q1 applies in their case. So 522Q1 applies to whether there are outstanding securities violation issues or debts and domestic support obligations. So the debtors need to actually file that statement. We've tried to simplify our rules for pro hac vice admission. We're now requiring that an attorney list each state where that attorney is admitted to practice, as well as the bar number for that state. And then we have some new rules. 4004-2 and 4007-1 relate to deadlines for filing objections to discharge and dischargeability complaints. And these rules apply in cases that are dismissed and then reinstated. So that happens frequently in the Chapter 13 world, and sometimes in the Chapter 7 world, where a debtor doesn't file schedules or doesn't pay a filing fee when they're supposed to after they've been given notice to cure the deficiency. The case gets dismissed. If they later move to reinstate the case and the case is reinstated, the question is, what should those deadlines be? They're triggered by the 341 meeting. And so our rule takes into consideration whether or not the 341 meeting has already taken place. So if the deadline has already expired when the case is dismissed, then the deadline's gone. But if the deadline hasn't expired then we set the deadline from a new 341 meeting. So make sure you take a look at that and keep on top of whether the case was dismissed and then reinstated. And then on behalf of Judge Bond, the court will be posting some proposed amendments to the local rules sometime in the very near future. And those amendments are expected to become effective on July 1st. So keep your eyes open for that. We give the public and lawyers the opportunity to comment on proposed rules, and those comments are considered very seriously by the Local Rules Advisory Committee and by the judge who's the chair of that committee, and by all of the judges. So, it takes a little bit of time, I know, to read through them. When they're posted in final version and in red line versions, so they're a little easier to follow, but really helpful to the district as a whole if you take a look at those, and if you see an issue, speak up, please. Then we had an administrative order effective February 2nd, 2022. I signed this administrative order, and I signed the original administrative order on our student loan management program. But I really did that for Judge Jenneman, because the student loan management program was another of Judge Jenneman's babies. So the revised administrative order addresses some issues that had been raised by the Department of Education. We think it meets all of the Department of Education's concerns, but the DOE attorneys are too busy to get back with us. So before Judge Jenneman retired, we thought it was important to put this administrative order out there, and it kind of simplifies the process in some ways and explains some procedures. And the primary change is in new paragraph 12, because most of these student loan management issues are in Chapter 13 cases. So it dictates language to be included in the Chapter 13 plan and describes what happens in loan rehabilitation and loan consolidation. So the Orlando Bar and Court have been in the forefront of this student loan management program, just as they were for the mortgage modification mediation program. And I really thank them for all their hard work. There was a committee, I'll call it an SLM committee, that worked on developing the language. Each member of that committee contributed so much. Tammy and Bob Branson, Doug Niway made some incredible contributions in terms of asking questions about what does something mean, and we kind of were able to figure out exactly what it meant, and really just put a lot of work into it, and I appreciate their efforts. Christy Arkovich in Tampa also worked very hard on that. Back to the source again for a moment, just so you realize the volume of material that's there. We have at the moment 133 posted procedures, 134 sample forms, motions, orders, and notices. What that means is when you go to file something, instead of just looking at your office's, your law firm's form, you want to take a look at the source and see what the preferred format should be and what the motion should include. And I'll just give you a little example. One of our form motions is a motion to strip a junior mortgage on a lien. We don't see that so much anymore because the real estate market's doing pretty well. But we probably had thousands of motions to determine secured status and strip junior liens on mortgages. And when we first started that procedure, it was shortly after I came on the bench, probably in about 2009. Attorneys were filing motions and they were giving us orders that did not include the legal description of the property involved. Well, the whole point to getting the order is so that when years later your client goes back to sell the property or refinance the property, your client has a court order that a title company can rely on. So rather than having everybody come back to court later for motions for reconsideration or motions to revise their orders, we set out what the procedures were right up front. So that's just an extreme example, but people, and when I say people, I mean attorneys, leave off information sometimes that is really critical to the merits of a motion or an order or a notice. So please, attorneys and your staff, please look at the source and make sure that you're using the most current form. The source is a work in process. Things are or progress, I never know the difference between those two terms. There are always changes being made to the source. So you may think you've got the latest version of the motion, but you may not. So we do try to announce significant changes. We send out a CMECF email blast when we have an update to the source. But the best practice is to frequently look at it when you're filing motions. Okay, and then, our style guide. So we have a style guide that kind of lays out how to prepare orders particularly, but also in briefs, what the preferred citations and formatting are. And that was just recently updated this November. So you want to take a look at that. And then something else that Judge Gentleman really started. She was really focused on two things when she became chief judge. One was, and I'm misstating them, so she's listening to this and she's going to be upset that I don't state it correctly. One was slow down to speed up, which is slow down to think about what you're doing. And the other is from the bottom up, working from the bottom up. And by bottom, she didn't mean lower level, but really what she meant was, rather than the judges dictating to the clerk's office or the judges dictating to the bar how they should be doing things, the people that are actually working within our system should be telling us what they need. And so we look to our clerk's office staff to make recommendations regarding how they can better process cases. And we look to the lawyers to make recommendations regarding how they, what they need to facilitate the practice of law for themselves and for their clients. So we really make a concerted effort to work with the bar. Judicial liaison meetings are common within each division. They're held a little differently depending on the division. I know in Tampa, the attorneys are specifically invited, but when an idea comes up at a judicial liaison meeting, they are usually put on an agenda for the judges to discuss at a judges meeting, and they're given a lot of consideration. So if you have the opportunity to participate in a judicial liaison meeting, I hope that you will. Our local rules advisory committee. Again, I've talked about our local rules and how important they are. These are our current members of the local rules advisory committee. Especially want to thank Jason Burgess in Jacksonville and Dan Velasquez in Orlando, having a lot of input and having served on that committee. Really, really great. And then we also have our steering committee. One of the major things that the steering committee does is puts on the bench bar conference. The last 2 years, our bench bar conferences have been done virtually. There is a certain advantage to that because we get a lot of participation. And that is great. Barbara Hart has been the chair of the steering committee, and she's been really responsible for leading the committee and the judges in these virtual conferences. They've just been great. But the steering committee usually picks a couple of topics each year to discuss at the bench bar conference, and a lot of good material comes out of those. And then whenever the judges need to have some assistance on a particular issue, we might form an ad hoc committee to address it. So here are our outgoing members of the steering committee. Particularly want to thank Anna DeVilliers from Orlando and Eileen Dolligan from Jacksonville, Gary Lublin from Orlando, and Miriam Suarez from Orlando. Thank you for your service on the committee. And then our current members are Chris Thompson, our incoming chair. So Chris has been on the committee now since 2017, so a long period of service, but I'm really grateful to him stepping into that role, so that will be great. And then Greg Atwater in Jacksonville, and Dan Velasquez in Orlando again, and Todd Budgeon in Orlando. So thank you all. And then you should be receiving by email or through CMECF email blasts, our Court Connection newsletter, something else that Judge Gentleman started. And we try to provide a lot of information about what's going on in our court, interesting issues regarding judges, court personnel, sometimes procedures. It's valuable to take a few moments and try and read that. So be on the lookout for that court connection. And then, of course, the one thing we can offer to our lawyers is free CLE. So we have an online CLE portal, and we have videos, we have archived videos. If you watch the video to the end, you end up getting the CLE course number. So if you need CLE credit, that's a great place to look and to get caught up to date on your CLE requirements. So I have two more things I want to say. And the first is, here's your CLE course number for today's program. And I'm sure it'll be emailed out to everybody else if you don't have time to write it down or take a quick snapshot of it. And the second is, since I have so many people here together, right now we have 71 people on the phone, I want to congratulate Andy Layden and his wife, Ashley, who just welcomed their third daughter into the world. So their daughter, Juliet, joins her older brothers, Reed, and his sister, Addie. Many of you know that Andy was my law clerk a long time ago. So congratulations, Andy. We're really excited for you and for Ashley. And I know that those of us who have children, our children are beautiful. Everyone's children, everyone's grandchild is beautiful. But I asked Andy if he'd go ahead and share a photo of these three adorable children, because if you're ever lucky enough to get a Christmas card from Andy, you'll know just how gorgeous they are. So congratulations, Andy and Ashley. Really thrilled for your family, and what a beautiful group of kids.
Thank you, Judge.
You're welcome. Okay, so that is all I have. I want to thank you all for your patience. I think I took a little bit longer than I was supposed to, but it's just great to see those of you whose pictures I could see on the screen, and I'm really glad to have had this time with you today. So thanks a lot, everyone. And I'm going to just I see pictures. Judge Gentleman, hey, here you are. So glad to see you. Tammy, hey. Anne Marie, hey. How wonderful. All right, so I'll shout out if you're on the screen. No, just photos. Okay, so a few brave souls are willing to turn their cameras on, and it's just wonderful to see you all. So thank you so much for your patience, and I look forward to giving you the 2023 presentation in person, and I hope to see you all in person long before then. Thanks a lot.